when you go, these files, some of them were easy to get, some of them were difficult to get. They had to be dug out of the archives, these police archives, in warehouses or whatever. And I mean, some of them. And I remember when you go after to find a case file, you need to have a date and you need to have names. And I remembered that case, but I couldn't remember the perpetrators' names. I couldn't remember the name of the victims, and I couldn't remember the actual date, but I knew it was summertime, and I knew I was really young. Turns out I was 18 in 1973. So, I just thought, well, but my friend, who's now deceased, James Massey, who was in probation and parole for over 20 years here in Louisville, who also introduced me to Jerry Thompson, which linked me to the Bundy murders, and that's why I wrote the first book, The Bundy Murders, and then 2 more books. So he's been an important link. When I told him about that, and I said, I'm looking at these cases, he said, oh, yeah. He said that happened in June of 73. And the guy's name is Tetrick, and the other guy's name is Sepchik. And so as he said that, I remembered, yes, I remember those names now. But you got to have those to hunt them down. And they had difficulty finding that case. And I know I had a conversation with one of the people in there, and he was going to give up. And I said, I said, well, I mean, he's being kind of flippant about it. And he said, what do you expect me to do? I said, I expect you to do your job. Go find the case file. And so he did. He did. He made sure they found the case file, and I finally got it. But it was really interesting to be able to get it. And that story was published in Snitch. A postscript to that story, which there's a couple actually, but a postscript to that story was it. I don't know if you ever got to see it as a Snitch article. Did you?
No, and it's funny because I used to read Snitch, but no, I never got to see it in that form.
Well, what happens, it talked about the Valley Drive-In murders on the front. And if you open the first page, every time that I had an article with them, and I didn't have all that many, but I had others in the pipeline that after it folded up in 2005, there weren't going to be any more. But they were always feature stories. So what happens is you have on the cover what the story's going to be about. Then you open up to like maybe the second page, and then it's spread out, and then maybe it goes to the third and fourth page. But what was interesting, and I had nothing to do with this, I thought it was a great idea, but, I had photographs too. And I had photographs of the girl that was murdered. And when you open up the page, there's a picture of her that I obtained through the Jefferson County Police Department. And that picture of her was her high school yearly picture, maybe even her graduation picture. I can't remember if she was graduating or had one more year, but I think it was a junior. But that was her main picture. And you remember at the end of the years, you pick your pictures up and all that stuff. Her picture had just come out. And so when the girl went missing, the parents took one of these photos, gave it to the police because she was missing, and they were hoping that was the latest photograph that they could make up posters and stuff like that and maybe find her. But they never reclaimed that picture, and maybe it had to stay within the file as part of the record. I don't know. But so when you open up the picture, when you open up the magazine, the newspaper-like thing, there she is. There's a picture of a drive-in, and her picture's on the drive-in screen, which I thought was an interesting way to display it. And at the time this was displayed, it was exactly 30 years to the same. I think that came out it was 2003. I think it came out in June or maybe late May, but it was almost at the 30-year mark from 1973 to 2003. And I thought it was an interesting way to display that picture. Well, I got a call from the editor one day who had been with the Courier Journal for like 25 years, 30 years, I can't remember. Richard, I think it's pronounced DeRusso, a really nice guy. He said, Kevin, where did you get that picture? I said, I got it from the Jefferson County police file. He said, are you sure? I said, yes. I said, why? He said, because the parents are called up and, they're very upset. I said, well, if they have a problem, I said, I'm very sorry. I'm really sorry about that. There's nothing we can do about that. But I said, if they do have a problem with that, and of course, in the back of my mind, he's thinking, are they going to sue? And I'm thinking, without saying it, if they sue, here's who they're going to have to sue. I said, well, if they have a problem with that, they need to file a complaint with the Jefferson County PD because it is part of the case file today. It's there. I said, and I just, I received this case file. I've got the case file. I've got the photographs, and it's part of the case file, which means it's public record. And so even though they don't like that, then we can't be blamed for it. Okay, so if they want to do something, apparently they never did. But he was relieved to hear that I didn't pull a fast one. Like, I guess he's thinking, what, did he pay a family member to do this? And shouldn't have done? I don't know what maybe Richard was thinking, but he was glad to hear. He said, are you sure it came from Jefferson County Police? I said, absolutely. And anyway, but I remember he told me when he was looking at the case file, because I think he had people that were, I kind of feel like he had somebody that went and got, and maybe had gotten the file too, because he looked at it. And he told me one day, he said, this thing is extremely well researched. And of course, I've always prided myself on my research of being exact and double, triple, quadruple checking sources and getting it down right. And he was very pleased with that. So, yeah, so I told him. So when I told him, yeah, listen, it came from them, he said, okay, that's good to hear. And so that was it. And then, of course, like I say, his daughter the soldier's daughter contacted me years, later, and I got to know her, and I got to know her husband. I met him here when they came down from wherever. They were here in Louisville for a while, and I got to meet him, and really nice people. And, your heart goes out to people, anybody that, had these terrible things happen to them, and she just lost her dad when she was just a little girl. So, and that these people are still breathing. That's why I'm so in love with the death penalty. But these guys committed murder at a time when the death penalty didn't exist. All they could get was life. And anyway, but they're still breathing. They got 3 hots in the cot, and they got medical treatment, and they got everything they need to live.
And we're paying for it.
And we're paying for it. And that's why I can't understand people that have a problem with the death penalty. They actually think that all life has worth. And I'm here to tell them that all life does not have worth. If you think all life has worth, then I guess Adolf Hitler's life had worth, and so did the SS guards at the concentration camp. I guess their lives have worth too. They don't, and neither do violent killers. These people need to go under the soil as quickly as you can get them there. And that's the way that is. So I hope we never get rid of it. But my God, in the progressive age we live in, no telling.
Well, as you and I have talked about in the past, I mean, we have it in the state, but we don't use it. So, you know what I mean?
No. In fact, there's a story in there about Victor Taylor. Do you remember the 2 Trinity boys that were murdered back in the early 80s? Oh yeah. They lost. They were going downtown to a game in Louisville. They were from Trinity High School, Catholic school, and playing their team was playing another school, and they were meeting like they were playing male, I think high school, but it was at an off-site thing for male, and they couldn't find their way, and they got picked up by these 2 guys, and they were taken to a place called Ardella Court, which is nothing more than an alleyway between 2 streets downtown, very deserted, and Victor Taylor sodomized one of them, and they said there had been sexual contact, and he killed both of them through gunshots to the head. And, of course, he's been on death row for 30 years, and he's still breathing. And, Kentucky is not one of these states that likes putting people to death. But I think the current thing is because, and things move like molasses in this state. I mean, this state is as bad as California. If you get the death penalty out there, you can just mark it down. Those people are going to die of old age. They rarely kill anybody. And I'm talking about cases that have been adjudicated down, and there's absolutely no doubt these people committed these heinous murders. And yet there's people there raising opposition, don't kill them. They're just crazy people as far as I'm concerned. They're mad. Anyway, so Victor Taylor, he's been, he kills these boys, and he's sitting there. I got a picture in the book. I got a picture of Taylor. I say something along the lines. He continues to grow old on Kentucky's death row. And then I have a picture of the field where he killed Nelson and Stevens. So it's a very, very, very sad case. I have a quote from this guy's retired now, the officer, and I don't have the book in front of me, but he talks about the officers that had to go, and find them past midnight, I guess, on the second night. I'm not sure, but it was. He said, he said you go through it means you go through your career, and you think you've seen it all, and then you see something like this, young people lying in the weeds like this. He said, I just can't tell you what the mood of the officers are, but I can tell you what they are. What the officers would love to do is have the killers there then, and they'd kill them themselves. Now, they wouldn't have done it, but you want to do it, so I can tell you what the mood of the cops were, because I know cops. They'd love to kill people right there who had actually done these things. But they don't do it. They're professional. They bring them in. Mm-hmm. I talked to a guy in the terrible killings out at California, if you've heard of the people, what's his name, Bittaker and Norris. And these are terrible murders they committed of young girls out there. And I would talk to one detective, and he said, yeah, we had to come in and testify. I said, what did you think when you saw like Norris sitting there? He said, well, I wanted to walk up, put my gun in the back of his skull and pull the trigger. But we're professional people. We don't do that. But that's what we want to do. So that's the mood of the officers. And really you can't blame them. And but professional people do their job. They bring them to justice, and they try to get them convicted. And so then when they go on to death row, I would like to see those things carried out. But I don't know. Some states really do it correctly. Texas does it, and Florida does it, and a few others. I think Oklahoma has some. So whatever's wrong with Kentucky with the appellate process, it's time for these people to go.
I'm with you 100%. We've talked about it before. And by the way, on Bittaker and Norris, we actually did a whole show on them, and it just staggers me that they're not dead. There's no reason that they shouldn't be. I understand why they're not, but they should be. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's
yeah, it's crazy. I had heard that South of the Lambs is based on the forensics people, and like John Douglas and people like that, and Wrestler. And I remember when they were shooting that, they said Scott Glenn was not a believer in the death penalty, and he may not be today. But the story goes like this. The guy pulls out the tape, which has never been released by the courts, and it won't be. Bittaker and Norris had made tapes of the torture of those girls. Things like they nicknamed him Pliers Bittaker. He would take pliers and pinch the nipples off, and he'd take a hammer and he would just keep hitting the girl in the elbow with a hammer, and the screams, this horrible, ungodly screams. And so you got somebody that waltzes in there that's progressive, and they think all life has meaning, and believe me, all normal life has extreme meaning. So much so that when people try to kill that normal life, they had no meaning. And so a lot of people go, well, the death penalty is just wrong. So he pulls out the tape and lets this person listen to this, to the torture and murder of these girls, from a tape that will never be released. The court will not allow it. But the behavioral science unit has copies, because they have to let their people listen to those. let them know what kind of people they're up against.